Hey everybody, welcome back to another session of Justin and Tim doing MRO talk. Um, today's topic is about kitting. So this is another one of these little finicky things that, eh, from what I've seen, is rarely done well for multiple reasons. But before we get into that, um, Justin and I come from a little bit different industry background, but we've got quite a broad breadth across heavy industry. But Justin, first, tell me from your experience, especially like in your oil and gas, some of the how did you guys manage kitting to make sure that the guy on the shop floor, man, he's got what he needs when he's going out to the wellhead or whatever he's doing.
Yeah, I think this is really, really important to talk about. And I think, I hear a lot of oil and gas clients say, this isn't possible, right? We've got too much unplanned
Yeah,
work and,
yeah, exactly.
and that, look, guys, I'm not telling you you're crazy, but when you really start planning and scheduling work, this is absolutely an essential part. And I saw guys, where I come from, we had six distribution centers across the country, and we
Hmm.
supported 40, 50 fields. And really for us, kidding was we would look forward the next 7 days, right? So after we got done issuing last week's stuff or the current week's um, materials for planned work,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
would look forward the next 7 days, and we started on that, right? So we especially with catalog materials, we would go out to the shelf, we'd pull our pick list, we'd go work order by work order, grab stuff off the
yep,
shelf, put them in boxes, bags, palletize, whatever we needed to do, and we
yep.
would kit those together in a job, and then we'd load them on the truck to be delivered for the upcoming work on the next week. So we it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really, really neat because once we established this routine and this process every week,
Mm,
people saw so much value in that, right? I didn't have my guys off their
yeah,
tools. My guys were my wrench time increased tremendously. And it was really cool because we went from guys coming to pick up their own parts out of our warehouse for next week's
yeah,
work to, oh, why don't you guys get a fleet of trucks? So we ended up with six trucks with 25 or 20-foot enclosed trailers, and we were doing
yeah,
bread runs every week for these guys, and it was just
yep,
fun to provide that service. So, and that's
yep.
all part of that kitting, right? Like forecasting next week's work and having that information together and the ability to put that together.
Mm,
So that's where I come from, and that's what I'd love to see people do
yeah.
because it just helps. It's just so fun to provide that customer service to those guys.
Oof. There's there's so many things to talk about there because that's so important. It's one of those things like you mentioned tool time. And how many times I've seen
Yeah,
slide that say, hey, 50% of the time I can't do the job because I don't have parts. And it frustrates me
it's
because
the
it's
number
always
one
feels like
complaint I
it's
hear all the time.
the number one complaint. And they always, it seems like it's being pointed at the warehouse's fault. But, was it planned? Was it scheduled? Did I need it today or next week? There's a lot in that. And kitting is a big piece of this is where if you're forward planning, and it comes back to one really important thing,
Yeah,
getting rid of free text because free text materials versus a
huge.
catalog material is huge because as you know, you receive a free text for a job, poof, if it's invisible. It's been expensed. It could be 3 weeks in advance. It could be 3 months in advance it gets received. And what does the warehouse typically do? Get rid of it. Give it to the maintenance guys because
Yeah, it's
it's their
there.
problem. I've expensed it. You paid for it. You can have it. Hold on to it. So, which I disagree. That's a whole different conversation. It's a whole probably different podcast because the warehouse job is the materials
Yeah.
management, but it's invisible. So it's like trying to hold water in your hands. It's very difficult. So one is number one. You got to stop. You got to reduce free text. We'll talk about that again and again and again in these podcasts because I'm a big one. Because once you've cataloged it, then you create visibility. You can create availability all through the work orders, your systems, and that's critically important because when you're kitting, you can kit if you got all the materials, you can kit materials, quite far in advance, depending on how you make it visible in the system. Because typically when you kit, you're issuing, so it's issuing, it's out of stock, but you still are you going to deliver it right then and there, or are you holding that kit for a future time? And that's where things can get a bit, gray. There's shades of gray in there, but it's such an important piece because as you were saying, these guys, if tool time, the key thing is keeping the maintenance guys working without stress. And so they're
That's
handing
it.
over parts that they
That's it,
need,
man.
when they need it, where they need it, which is an SAP. That's your unloading points. They pick up, I've got everything I need to do that job, no stress. They do the work and they move on, especially when it's nice planned work because it's safer. So there's probably a lot more to discuss than we have in these short little podcast series, but this is probably one we'll need to expand on. But probably my key takeaway is to kit parts well, you've got to reduce free text because it's very difficult to
Yes,
kit
sir.
free text with your catalog parts. You can, but it is much more difficult, and that's probably for a longer podcast we can get into because there are some options there.
Well, that's it, man. That's really good input, Tim. I just can't state enough. Once you start following this MRO flow, things
Yep.
just start falling into place. And after we get through this, we're going to start talking about MRP and some of the cool stuff that
Oh man,
your
yeah,
ERP solution will do for you, right? So,
yep. We got
uh,
to forge these
but more to
foundations,
come.
baby.
And that's it. Forge them foundations, man. So we'll catch you guys on the next podcast, and hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, give us a shout. Y'all take
Yeah,
care.
reach out. See you, everybody.